Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another top 5 video, and this time around we're doing a top 5 with a little bit of a tech twist to it, because if you didn't know this about me already, I collect a lot of older Apple products, from Macs to iPods to iPhones and anything in between. And for a lot of people, when they come over and see my collection, they always ask me which one is my favorite on the collection. And I don't really have an answer for that, and I've never really given it much thought, but today I figured we'd go over my top 5 favorite Apple products from my collection. So let's get started. So starting off at number 5 is easily one of the largest and definitely one of the heaviest Apple products in my collection, which is the Power Mac G5. Now this Mac comes in at number 5 for quite a few reasons. One of the main reasons is the fact that the specific model I have here is the fastest Mac that you could have bought from Apple back in 2003. And it's fast enough that it's somewhat usable in 2021 if I really needed to use it. If you guys want to see a video on that, let me know. I'd love to do a Power Mac G5 in 2021 video. But yeah, it's actually somewhat usable. With 10.4 Fox as your web browser, you can go on things like YouTube or Google or even the Apple homepage, kind of, and it's fairly usable. And it gets a new enough update to macOS that a lot of things that you take for granted on modern macOS existed when this thing was around. It's pretty wild. And of course, me being me, I play Halo on it once in a while because you can, so why not? On top of its fairly robust power for its age, it also has fairly standard components inside that are extremely customizable. RAM, while being a bit old, is still standard, so you can buy RAM for this thing from places that still manufacture or have stock of it and upgrade the memory. And the storage is SATA, standard SATA, like what you see in modern PCs today. So the day that I bought this, I went to Best Buy and bought a solid state drive to put in it, and it just worked. So that's a plus right there for long-term maintenance especially. And another big reason why it is one of my favorites is because the design is timeless. People look at this thing when they come over and immediately assume that I have a Mac Pro, and that's because the design for this computer was the basis for the next gen Mac Pro, and it's even somewhat of the basis for the newest Mac Pro. The only design that didn't use a derivative of this setup was the trash can Mac Pro. That really speaks volumes to how timeless this thing is. The only real downsides to this computer are the size, the weight, and the power consumption, because if I ever want to set this thing up to demo to somebody, I have to basically set up an entire desktop setup just to show off a few things about it, and it's very hot, so power consumption is definitely up there, and I don't leave it plugged in too often. I only hook it up once in a while for maintenance. So yeah, it's a pain in the butt to set up, but when it is set up and you use it, it is just a joy for its age. Coming in at number 4 is another Power Mac, but it's the earlier generation, Power Mac G4. Now this one's in the running for quite a few reasons. Number 1, it is quite the conversation starter because it's such a unique look. And the design itself, while not as timeless as the Power Mac G5, it does still hold this unique quality that Apple really kind of just gave off for that entire generation of Macs. It's made of plastic, but not a plastic that looks cheap. It looks space age, futuristic. It's really cool, and they use glossy plastic where it needs to and matte plastic where it contrasts well, and the Quicksilver design personally is my favorite design of the Power Mac G4. There were 3 designs. There was the original, the Quicksilver, and of course the mirror door, but I think the Quicksilver is easily my favorite. It's also very easy to work on. Now, getting parts for it is not as easy as the Power Mac G5, but if you needed to actually clean anything, dust it out, check for parts that might have failed, it's very easy to open. You just pull a tab on the side, the whole thing opens up, and it's just right there for you to work on. So again, a very different time for Apple. And it's reasonably powerful. The G4 is definitely showing its age more than the G5, but it's still somewhat usable. And again, with some graphical glitches for some reason, you can play Halo on it. The only real downsides to this one are pretty much the same as the last one. It's kind of heavy, kind of big, and you have to set up an entire desktop setup just to demo it to somebody. But I'd say the only other issue, apart from power consumption, is the volume. It is very loud because there's no fan speed control. It's basically fan speed at 100% when on, and, well, off when it's off. But apart from those few things, I think this thing handily earns the number 4 spot on my list. Now, number 3 is something that I can actually show you right here on this camera as opposed to cutting away to B-roll footage, because it's the first iPhone. If you all are watching me on a smartphone right now, This is the phone that made that possible because smartphones of the time had very basic software and a solid keyboard and very tiny screens, and Apple went all in with an entire multi-touch display with everything put on the display except for a single home button. And that was basically the form factor that took over and is still the dominant design all the way up to today, with obviously some changes like the removal of the home button and making screens bigger. But this was the phone that started it. It's number 3 on my list because it's something I've always wanted. It's just so cool, and it's legitimately a piece of mobile history. Whether you like Apple or not, you can't deny this changed the mobile landscape, and it's easy to demo for people because I can basically charge it up for a couple minutes, hand it to somebody, and let them play around with it. I don't have to set up an entire computer. The only real downsides to it are that the battery is starting to show its age. Not as much as I would have expected, but it is still showing a bit of its age. It feels dense but delicate. It's really kind of hard to explain, and I gotta go digging out some 30-pin connectors to actually charge it up to show to people. But otherwise, the iPhone 1 is easily one of my favorites and has easily earned itself a number 3 spot on this list. Now, my number 2 on this list is actually kind of a weird story because it was given to me because it was originally going to be recycled, and when I got it, it had all of its discs and the charger, and it's the rarest item in my collection. It's the special edition Graphite iBook G3. This iBook has a really interesting story, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about it, but essentially the only way to get the Graphite or keyline models of the iBooks was to buy it through Apple's website back in the day. That was the only way to get the special editions, and most people back then weren't really into buying things online, so they bought whatever was available at the Apple Store. So right off the bat, there weren't many of these, and Apple was thought of as the colorful computer company back in that day. So if people did want to buy one online, they'd usually buy the flashier one, meaning that the Graphite was even less common. So apart from its rarity, this thing has all of its original discs, so if I ever wanted to put it straight back to how it would have come out of the box, I can do that because I have the original recovery discs, and it's very easy to set up. I don't have to wait for it to charge up like I do on an iPhone. I can just plug it into power, press the power button, and there we go. I'm into Mac OS. And again, just like the Power Mac G4, the design is super unique. This is from a really weird era where plastics from Apple were decent and things looked really cool, and Apple used the ability to mold plastic to their advantage. And really the only downside to the design on this one is that the rubber didn't age too well, but I get why they used it. It's sort of a bumper in case you run into something with your laptop. The keyboard is pretty decent. The trackpad, while worn, is still good, but it does not have any of the gestures that you would expect from a modern Mac, because why would it? Oh, and something I forgot to mention here, this was actually the first consumer laptop available with Wi-Fi, which I actually still use once in a while when I fire it up to like move files back and forth over the network. It's pretty cool and amazing for 1998. And the display is not so great, but this iBook, specifically mine, has all of its original components. I have not upgraded a single thing. Same hard drive from factory, same battery from factory, unfortunately, and I've upgraded it as far as it can go to macOS 10.4. It is so cool, and again, easy to demo. And one of the cool things about this era of the iBook is that
it has a handle.
Oh yeah, look at that. It's got a handle. Now, up to this point on the list, every device I've talked about has been something that has come out in my lifetime that I personally have experienced in one way or another. But this one is older than I am, and I'm willing to bet it's probably older than you are. It's the Apple IIc. No, it's not called a Macintosh or an iMac or Mac of any kind. This is actually before or around the same time that the original Macintosh was being launched in 1984. And it was actually more popular than the Macintosh. The Apple II series of devices is always something I've wanted to have in my collection, and I'd love to have an original Apple II, but not really holding my breath on that one. But the Apple IIc has a couple unique things about it that I really love. First and foremost, the design of this version of the Apple II was specifically helmed by Steve Jobs, and he went with a company called Frog Design to make this sort of all-inclusive portable version of a Macintosh. Even I made the mistake, it's not a Mac, a portable version of the Apple II series. And this one, just like the iBook, has a handle. I've got the screen for it, I've got the stand for it, which, yes, they were actually separate. The Mac Pro was not the first time they ever did that. And I have an expanded floppy disk drive for it. It's really cool, but there's one thing about it that I am super proud to have. I have all of the original boxes for it. Yeah, all the boxes. Every time I go to set it up, I literally unbox the product again. It's so cool. And I don't see many of these with the boxes still intact. And the fact that I found this for the price that I found it was amazing. And honestly, I wouldn't pay the money that people want now for this, but the fact that I have one, it makes me super happy. Some cool things about it, at least in my opinion, are things like the fact that it doesn't have a graphical user interface. It runs BASIC, Apple BASIC, so you have to code everything. So this, for example, is a game that I found online called Snail that I wrote myself, or you can play the original Oregon Trail on it. Now, the screen is only green, but I can connect it to my TV and get color graphics because these did output in color. Fun fact, the color on the Apple logos was actually there to signify that their computers could do color graphics. The more you know. But generally, anytime I show this off, it has to be for a really good reason, because taking this thing out of its box and putting it back every time is a bit of a hassle, and I risk damaging the boxes even more. And it's so old that I worry that someday something's gonna break. And on these computers, if something breaks, you're soldering, because there's only a handful of things on these motherboards that actually have sockets. Everything else is soldered to traces on the board. So if something breaks, oh man, I don't want to think about it. But for now, it works very well, and it is the pride and joy of my collection. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Were there any products that you saw maybe when I did my panning shot of the shelf that you would want to see a bigger video on? Do you actually want to see the Power Mac G5, me attempting to use it in 2021? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you did like this video, a like would be appreciated. Subscribe if you want more content like this, top 5s of anime and tech reviews and anime reviews, all that stuff. I'm all over the place, and I'm streaming, so check that out as well. You can head on over to Twitch and check me out there. But otherwise, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.